Have you ever been framed at work so cleanly you started doubting your own memory? The first weird thing wasn't the missing money. It was my security badge. Someone had wiped it down so carefully it looked new, like it had never been in my hand once, even though I used it every day. By the time I realized what that meant, HR already had evidence, my boss already had a script, and the police already had my name. I worked for a mid-sized logistics company outside London. Not glamorous. Pallets, invoices, carrier contracts. The kind of business where the numbers matter more than the humans. My job title was accounts coordinator, which really meant I was the person who cleaned up everyone else's mess without making it look like anyone had made one. If a carrier billed us twice, I caught it. If a warehouse manager forgot to scan a delivery and someone screamed about missing stock, I found the paper trail. If a director promised something to a client and didn't tell finance, I got to be the one saying no in a polite email and then getting blamed for being difficult. I was good at it. Not in an ambitious boss babe way. More like, I liked knowing the truth of things. Numbers don't pretend. People do. My boss Gavin loved people. He was one of those men who could walk into a room and immediately become the center of it without raising his voice. Mid-40s, always looked like he'd just stepped off a LinkedIn headshot. He called everyone mate in a way that made you feel chosen. When I started, he told me, "You're going to be the backbone of this department, Mara, I can tell." 2 months later, I stopped believing compliments. It began with a supplier dispute. A carrier claimed we hadn't paid 3 invoices. They forwarded copies, with our bank details and everything, plus a polite threat about debt collection. I checked our payment system. Nothing. No matching transactions. So I asked for the original invoice submission emails, because half the time the issue is someone sent it to an old address, or attached the wrong file, or wrote the wrong reference number. The carrier sent the emails. They were addressed to our accounts inbox. From our accounts inbox, there was a reply. "Thanks, we'll process this today." That reply wasn't written by me. I could tell by tone alone. It was too chipper. I don't write like a Labrador. The attachment in those emails was strange too. The logo looked slightly stretched, like it had been pasted in. The invoice numbers didn't follow the carrier's normal format. And the bank details on the invoice weren't theirs. The sort code was different. I should have shut my mouth right then and gone straight to the finance director. But this is the part where being the reliable person screws you. You assume the system will do the right thing if you give it the right information. So I forwarded the chain to Gavin and wrote, "Looks like fraud attempt. Bank details don't match carrier. We haven't paid these." He replied within 3 minutes. "Good catch. Bring it up in our 1-to-1. That 1-to-1 was the following Tuesday. We sat in the little meeting pod near the kitchen, the one that always smelled like microwave curry because people ate in there when the canteen was busy. Gavin smiled like he was about to tell me good news. Then he said, "So, I've had a look at what you sent. Interesting stuff." I waited. He tapped the printed emails like he was thinking. "Do you recognize the reply?" "No," I said. "It wasn't me." He didn't react to that, which should have been my second warning. "Well, it came from our inbox that multiple people access," I said. He nodded slowly, like I'd said something naive. "True. But the timings, it's awkward." I asked what he meant. He leaned in a bit, lowering his voice. "The finance director has been asking questions about accounts processes. Audit stuff. He's under pressure. And now we've got something that looks like a payment diversion attempt." I felt my stomach tighten. "But we didn't pay it." Gavin smiled again. "Not those ones. No." My whole body went cold. "What do you mean, not those ones?" He opened his laptop and swiveled it toward me. On the screen was a spreadsheet of outbound payments. There were 3 transactions, each around $8,000, paid to an account I didn't recognize. Date stamps, over the last 6 weeks. Reference numbers, the same invoices the carrier was claiming we hadn't paid. I stared at the screen like staring would change it. "That's not their bank account." "No," Gavin said softly. "It isn't." I looked at him. "So someone changed the bank details." He let out a quiet breath. "Yes. And Mara, the access logs show your user ID making the changes." I laughed once. It wasn't humor. It was my brain refusing to accept the shape of reality. "That's impossible," I said. "I don't even have permission to edit supplier bank details." He tilted his head. "You do. You got elevated permissions when we moved systems in September. Remember? IT did it for the transition." I did remember. The new system rollout had been chaos. People couldn't log in. Payments got stuck. Half the company acted like the building was on fire. I remembered getting an email from IT saying my permissions had been temporarily adjusted. Temporary. Not "here's your new power to reroute money." "I never asked for that," I said. Gavin's smile faded in a rehearsed way. "No one's saying you asked. But it happened under your login." I could feel my pulse in my throat. "So someone used my login." His eyes flicked away for half a second, then back. "Maybe, but then we need to explain how." "Check CCTV," I said immediately. "Check who was at my desk." He made a slow calming motion with his hand. We're doing due diligence. I just need you to understand the seriousness. I do, I snapped. This is fraud. He nodded like I was finally catching up. Right. And because it's serious, HR is going to get involved. And because it's serious, I need you to be very careful about what you say to anyone. I stared at him. Are you telling me to keep quiet? I'm telling you, he said very gently, not to start rumors. It could damage the business. It could damage you. Then he added, as if it was a kindness, let's just handle it properly. I walked back to my desk like a ghost. I sat down and opened the access logs myself, because my brain needed to see if this was some misunderstanding. The logs were there. My user ID, supplier bank detail change, supplier record edit, payment approval chain. I scrolled down to see the timestamps. They were all at 1847, 1852, 1905. Times I wasn't at my desk. I was never there that late. I commuted. I had a cramped little flat with a dodgy boiler and a cat that got anxious if dinner was late. I left by 17:30 most days. I checked my calendar. On 2 of those dates, I was in the dentist chair. On one of them, I was at my mom's birthday dinner in Croydon. I opened my email sent folder. Nothing. That's when the fear sharpened into anger. Someone wasn't just stealing money. They were doing it in a way that made it look like me. And they were doing it well. I went to IT first. I didn't even think. I just walked over and asked Dan, the guy who handled systems access, if he could look up my login activity. He gave me that, you're asking something awkward face. Is this about the finance thing? It's about my user ID being used after hours, I said. I need to know where it logged in from. Dan hesitated. Gavin said not to. Dan, I cut in, keeping my voice low, someone is using my account to reroute money. If you don't help me, I'm the one who gets arrested. Please. That did it. Dan's eyes shifted from cautious employee to fellow human being. He turned to his screen, typed a few commands, and pulled up an activity report. My account had logged in from an IP address that wasn't the office network. Is that remote access? I asked. Dan swallowed. Yeah, VPN. I don't use VPN, I said. He rubbed his forehead. Your account has VPN access. I didn't request that. I know. Can you see which device? I asked. He clicked around. It says, Windows device. No specific ID listed here. So anyone with my password could log in from home, I said. He didn't answer. Dan, I said. Do you know who has my password? His face went blank. No, and even if I did, I can't say. My hands started shaking, which pissed me off because I needed to stay clear-headed. Okay, I said. Reset my password. Right now. Dan hesitated again, then nodded. I can do that. 5 minutes later, my password was reset and MFA was enabled. I walked back to my desk feeling slightly less like prey. At 16:12, I got an email meeting invite from HR. Investigatory meeting, urgent. At 16:13, I got another email from Gavin. Just a heads up, HR will want to chat. Stay calm, we'll get through it. At 16:30, I was in a glass meeting room with Tessa from HR, Gavin, and a man I'd never seen before in a suit who introduced himself as external consultant. He never said what kind of consultant. He just sat there with a notebook like he was collecting reasons to dislike me. Tessa did that HR voice, the one that sounds sympathetic but isn't. Mara, this is not a disciplinary meeting, this is fact-finding. I didn't trust her for a second. She slid printed documents across the table. Bank detail change logs, payment reports, email chains. Some of the emails had my name in the signature. I stared. That's not my signature. Gavin leaned forward slightly. It's the standard template. But I didn't send those, I said. Tessa nodded slowly. We understand that's what you're saying. I hated that wording. It was like my denial was an expected symptom. The consultant spoke for the first time. Do you live alone? I blinked. What? Do you live alone? He repeated, patient like I was hard of hearing. Yes, I said. Why? Does anyone have access to your laptop, your home Wi-Fi, your passwords? No, I said. No one. Gavin gave a small sigh, like this was difficult for him. Mara, we're trying to understand how this could happen. Because from where we're sitting, it looks bad. I looked at him. From where you're sitting, it looks like someone used my account after hours from a VPN. That's what it looks like. Tessa's eyes flicked to Gavin. We've been advised not to discuss technical details until we have a full report. Convenient, I said before I could stop myself. Tessa's expression tightened. I understand this is stressful. What's stressful? I said, voice rising a bit. Is being shown fake emails and told my login stole money. Gavin's voice sharpened. First time I'd heard it. No one said fake. We said concerning. I took a breath. I reset my password. I enabled MFA. It confirmed there were VPN logins after hours. Gavin blinked, genuinely surprised. You spoke to IT. Yes, I said. Because I'm not sitting here quietly while you build a case against me. That's when the consultant finally smiled. Not friendly. More like he enjoyed conflict. Tessa said, Mara, you should have raised that through proper channels. I did, I said. I raised the fraud issue with Gavin. Gavin spread his hands. And I raised it with finance. That's what led us here. Tessa slid another paper toward me. Given the seriousness, we're placing you on paid suspension while we investigate. My mouth went dry. So I'm suspended. Paid suspension, she corrected. Like a criminal, I said. No, she said. Like an employee under investigation. Gavin did a fake soft voice again. It's standard procedure. I looked at him and saw something I hadn't noticed before. Relief. He looked relieved that I was being removed. I walked out with a cardboard box like I was in some American TV show. Except the box contained my mug and a couple of pens and a photo of me and my mum that I took because I didn't want it sitting on my desk while people whispered. When I got home, my cat rubbed against my legs like nothing had happened, and I stood in my kitchen holding the box and realized my whole life had just been turned into an allegation. The next day, the police called. It wasn't dramatic. No sirens, no banging on the door, just a withheld number. A man introduced himself as Detective Constable Reese. He asked if I could come in for a voluntary chat regarding a fraud investigation linked to my employer. Voluntary. That word makes you feel like you have control. You don't. I called my mum after I hung up. I told her something was wrong at work and I might need legal advice. She went silent for a beat and then said, "Have you done something stupid?" It hurt more than I expected. Not because she's a bad person. Because she's lived long enough to know the world assumes guilt first. No, I said. I haven't. Then we'll sort it, she said, voice firmer now. Don't talk to anyone without a solicitor. I found a solicitor through a friend of a friend who owed my mum a favor. The solicitor's name was Farah. She was calm in a way that made me calmer. She told me, bring everything you have. Emails, dates, calendar entries, anything that proves you weren't there when those changes happened. So I did what I always do when something feels unreal. I started building a file. I printed my calendar entries for the days the fraud happened. Dentist appointment confirmation, train tickets to Croydon, a receipt from the restaurant where we ate for my mum's birthday. I exported my phone location history. I didn't even know you could do that until I Googled it at 2 a.m., with my heart hammering. I also did something petty that ended up saving me. I checked my own email login history. Microsoft keeps a record of sign-ins. I looked at it and felt my blood turn to ice again. There were sign-ins from places that weren't me. Not just the office, not just my home. There were sign-ins from somewhere in Manchester, then somewhere in Birmingham, all on dates when I'd been sitting at my desk in London. Someone had been in my email. And the scary part? Those sign-ins were marked as successful. That meant they had my password. How? I started thinking back through the last few months like rewinding a tape. Every time I'd logged in while someone stood behind me. Every time I'd typed my password in a rush. Every time I'd left my laptop unlocked while running to the loo. I was careful, but careful isn't the same as perfect. Then I remembered a small thing. 2 months earlier, Gavin had insisted we standardize passwords during the system migration. He'd framed it as efficiency. So if someone's off sick, we can access the shared systems without drama. He'd asked me to set my password to match the standard pattern everyone was using. Company name 2025. Sort of thing. I'd refused. Politely. I said I used unique passwords. He'd laughed like I was being cute. Then a week later, I'd had an email from IT. We've reset your password as part of the migration. Please use the temporary password below and change it upon login. Temporary passwords are a gift if you're stealing access. I hadn't thought about it because I changed it immediately. But maybe someone saw it before I did. Maybe someone forwarded it. Maybe someone had access to the IT ticket queue. Suddenly the universe stopped feeling random and started feeling designed. Farah came with me to the police station. We sat in a little interview room with a tape recorder and a box of tissues that felt like an insult. DC Reese wasn't aggressive. He was almost bored. Which was worse, like he'd already decided this was routine. Person gets caught, person denies it. He said, your employers reported unauthorized changes to supplier bank details that resulted in funds being diverted. The access logs point to your account. I said, my account was compromised. I have evidence of unauthorized sign-ins to my email and system access from outside the office. He looked at Farah, then back at me. Do you have that evidence with you? I slid the printed sign-in history across the table. He actually leaned forward for the first time. That was the first moment I felt a tiny crack of hope. Farah said, my client also has documentation proving she was not present at the times these system changes were recorded. Reese flipped through the pages, then said, why would someone target you? That question is the one that keeps you awake, because it forces you to admit you might be powerless. I said, because I noticed the fraud attempt, and I told my boss. Reese paused. Your boss's name? Gavin Larkin, I said. Reese wrote it down. Then he asked something that made my skin prickle. Do you know who approved the payments? I blinked. What? Payments of that value usually require an approval chain, he said. Who signed off? I looked at Farah. She looked back at me, calm but sharp. I said, Gavin? And the finance director, I think. Reese nodded slowly like he'd expected that. When we left, Farah said, they've built a narrative around you. But the approval question is good. Fraud rarely happens without someone higher up either being incompetent or complicit. I didn't want to hear that word, complicit, because it meant this wasn't just a random hacker. It meant it was inside. Back at home, I did something that felt insane but also necessary. I opened LinkedIn and looked at Gavin's profile. He'd posted recently about integrity and building trust. The comments were full of people praising him. I wanted to smash my phone. Then I saw a post from our finance director, Mark. It was a congratulations post about Gavin's leadership and keeping the business stable during transition. Keeping it stable by throwing me under a bus apparently. My suspension dragged on. Days turned into weeks. HR gave me nothing concrete. Investigation ongoing. We're reviewing the evidence. Please refrain from contacting colleagues. Colleagues stopped replying to my texts anyway. I realized something brutal. People don't want to be near a potential scandal, even decent people. Imogen, who I'd sat next to for a year, finally sent me one message. Hope you're okay. Can't really talk. They said we shouldn't. I didn't reply. I stared at it until my eyes burned. The isolation was part of the design. Cut you off, then tell your story for you. So I made my own channel. I filed a subject access request for my employment records. HR acted like I'd asked to see state secrets, but legally they had to provide certain things. I also contacted the carrier directly, not through Gavin, and asked them to confirm their bank details and whether they'd ever been paid to the account listed on those fraudulent invoices. They confirmed in writing that the account wasn't theirs. That mattered. I then asked something else. Had they ever changed their bank details recently? They said no. So someone in our system had replaced their bank details with a new account and then sent invoice copies to justify it. And those invoice copies were fabricated. I started mapping who had access to what. Who could reset passwords? Who could approve payments? Who could alter supplier records? And I kept circling back to one uncomfortable fact. The person who benefited most from me being blamed was Gavin. Because I was the one who noticed the fraud. Because I was the one who asked questions. Because I was the one who would keep asking. Then another odd detail landed in my lap. A letter arrived at my flat addressed to M. Harris. Not my name. Close, but wrong. Like someone had guessed. Inside was a bank statement. Not mine. For an account at a bank I didn't use. The balance was over £40,000. The transactions were incoming transfers, each around $8,000. Same amounts as the diverted payments. I stared at the paper until my hands went numb. Someone had mailed me evidence, accidentally or intentionally, I didn't know. But it meant one thing. The fraud wasn't as clean as they thought. Farah told me not to touch it except to photograph it and bag it. Give it to the police, she said. Do not do anything else. We handed it over. DC Reese's tone changed after that. He wasn't bored anymore. A week later, Farah called me and said, the police have requested additional access logs from your employer. Good, I said, but my voice came out rough. Are they cooperating? Farah hesitated. They're slow. Of course they were. Then HR emailed me, suddenly urgent again. We need you to attend a meeting regarding your continued employment. That's the wording they use when they're about to fire you. I went in with Farah. HR had two people this time, like I was dangerous. Gavin was there too, looking grim in a performative way. Tessa said, Mara, we've concluded our internal investigation. Based on the information available, we believe there has been gross misconduct. I stared at her. You believe I committed fraud? She kept her HR face. We believe you were responsible for unauthorized changes leading to financial loss. Farah said. On what basis? Considering my client has provided evidence of account compromise and your supplier has confirmed the bank details were falsified. Tessa blinked. We considered that. Gavin spoke softly. Mara, we wanted to trust you. But the evidence it's hard to ignore. I couldn't help it. I laughed again, sharp. You wanted to trust me. You suspended me before asking IT to check VPN logs. His eyes flicked, tiny flash of anger. That's not fair. Farah leaned forward. We are aware there were VPN logins outside office hours attributed to Mara's account. We are also aware the approval chain includes senior staff. Have you provided that information to the police? Tessa's voice tightened. This is an employment matter. Farah said, it's a criminal investigation. You don't get to pretend it isn't because it's inconvenient. The consultant, a different one this time, spoke. We are proceeding with termination. I felt my chest compress. Even though I'd expected it, hearing it was like someone slamming a door on my future. Farah said, if you terminate her under these circumstances, we will pursue wrongful dismissal and report any lack of cooperation to the police. Gavin leaned back, jaw tight. Are you threatening us? Farah smiled politely. I'm explaining consequences. I walked out fired. That night, I sat on my sofa in the dark, not even watching TV, just staring at the wall while my cat slept on my feet like she could anchor me to the planet. That's when my phone buzzed. It was Imogen. A real call, not a text. I answered immediately. Hello? She whispered. Mara, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. My throat tightened. What's going on? She said. I shouldn't be calling you, but I can't sleep. I keep thinking about it. About what? I said. She took a breath. Gavin asked me to do something months ago. During the migration. He said he needed access to your account because you were off sick and a payment was stuck. You weren't off sick. You were in the office. What did you do? I didn't give him your password, she said quickly. But he asked me to send a screenshot of the IT email with the temporary passwords because I was helping IT coordinate the rollout. He said he needed it for tracking. Did you send it? There was silence. Yes, she whispered. I sent it. I didn't think. He was my boss. I pressed my palm to my forehead. Imogen, that's how they got in. I know, she said, voice breaking but not dramatic, just flat with guilt. And then I saw something else. What? I saw him in the office late, she said. After hours. He came in on a Saturday. He was with Mark, the finance director. They were in the pod near accounts. They had your laptop. My stomach lurched. How do you know it was my laptop? I recognized the sticker on the corner, she said. The stupid cat sticker. I couldn't breathe properly. My laptop had that sticker. My laptop that IT had temporarily given admin permissions. My laptop that had access to supplier records. Imogen said, I didn't want to believe it. And then you got suspended. And everyone started saying you'd been stealing. And I froze. Will you tell Farah? Will you tell the police? I'm scared, she said. They'll ruin me. They already ruined me, I said, and I hated how bitter it sounded. But you can help fix it. She went quiet for a second, then said, okay. Yes. Tell your solicitor to call me. I'll tell them everything. When I hung up, I sat there shaking. Because the truth finally had a shape. It wasn't a hacker. It wasn't a mistake. It was my boss. And the finance director. Even though everything pointed to them from the start. The police interview, my boss, my fucking boss putting on his damn pantomime emotions. I didn't want to believe. I was naive. And they'd used my work ethic like a tool to bury me. Farah moved fast after that. She took Imogen's statement, then sent it to DC Reese. Reese called me the next day and asked if I could come in again. He was clipped and focused. He said, we have reason to believe the fraud originated internally. We are executing warrants to seize devices and access logs. I felt a cold satisfaction and a sick dread at the same time. What does that mean for me? It means, he said, you may no longer be treated as a suspect. May, I repeated. He looked at me, not unkindly. We still need to verify everything, but your evidence has been consistent. Consistent. Like I'd been living inside a spreadsheet of my own innocence. 2 weeks later, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a news alert from a local business site. Not a national headline. Just a small article. Logistics firm under investigation for internal fraud. I clicked it and saw Gavin's face in the thumbnail, the same LinkedIn smile, except now the caption said former operations manager arrested. Mark was named too. Suspended pending investigation. The company released a statement about 1 or 2 individuals acting outside company values. They didn't mention me. Of course they didn't. The company would rather pretend I never existed. Farah filed my claim the next day. Wrongful dismissal, reputational damage, failure to follow fair process. It took months. I won't pretend it was cinematic. It was paperwork, silence, delays, settlement offers with insulting numbers. Eventually, the company settled. Not because they suddenly grew a conscience. Because they didn't want a tribunal exposing how easily they'd thrown an employee to protect leadership. The money helped. It didn't fix everything. I didn't get my old life back. I got something else. A new job, new people, a different version of myself that checks locks twice and screenshots everything. Imogen quit too. She texted me later saying she couldn't stand the smell of that office anymore. I understood. As for Gavin and Mark, I followed the case updates like you follow weather warnings. Not because you're obsessed. Because you need to know if the storm is moving toward you again. Last I heard, charges were ongoing. The system moves slow, especially when the criminals wore suits and spoke politely. The bit that still burns is how easy it was for them to almost get away with it. All they had to do was pick someone reliable, someone quiet, someone without a big support network at the company. Me. Have you ever realized someone was quietly setting you up long before you even knew you were in a fight? Let me know in the comments.
Thanks for watching. If you got this far, leave a comment, like if you liked it, and follow for more.